So what factors make retail properties attractive for long-term investments?
I think what you just said, long-term investment, is the crux. There's no quick fix in making money, I don't think, or generating wealth. And I think if you recognize that investment is a long-term phenomenon, retail property is a long-term asset. I mean, there's no question. It's interesting, you mentioned our involvement in some of those centres earlier. I think Sandton City was opened in 1970, which is 50 odd years ago. 73. 50 years ago, almost to the day. Now, you can take a view, but I think that's quite long term. And, over time it's grown into a significant asset. So I think that really the first recognition you've got to have is that property generally is a long-term asset. It's not something which you can just trade and expect to sustain yourself. So to be sustainable, I think you've got to have that view, and I think it's a good asset class if you have that view.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, in fact, the long term is important. For example, just before COVID, we acquired a 50% share of Messina Mall next to Byte Bridge. And during COVID, the border was closed with Zimbabwe, and suddenly our turnovers dropped off and our income in the centre obviously dropped off. But that's come back with a bang now. I think you're telling me that year on year, we're up something like between 35 and 40% in turnover there now because the border's been opened properly. So people don't have to swim across the Limpopo. They can actually drive through the border post. And, so we're back to where we were, and actually we're accelerating ahead. So that's just one classic example about how property is not a short-term investment, it's a long-term investment. And the important thing is to be in a location where the market, the spending power in that location, wherever your shopping center is increasing. It's pointless going into a location where, for argument's sake, people are leaving that location, moving elsewhere, because the turnovers of your tenants will go down and thus your rentals will go down. It's just very simple economics.
So you're saying that turnovers and rentals are related?
Of course they are. No one's going to pay a high rental if their turnover keeps dropping. So, you've got to make sure that your tenant's turnover increases way above what other people can do so that we can keep our properties full. And I know, for example, we have a marginal or a fractional vacancy factor compared to the REITs that we partner with in numbers of centres and so forth. And it's always the last 3 or 4% of rental which gives you the cream, not the 80-90% that comes from the bulk of your tenants.
So then why is it crucial to align a property size with market availability?
Well, I think I've got a very strong view on that, and that is that we can only subscribe to markets. We can't create markets. I've been on record, I think, as saying that I'm hugely critical of the oversizing of a number of our centres. One does research and one gets a gut feel and one works in the industry, and you look at these things of 120,000 square meters, 140,000, and you really wonder to what extent it's justified. Certainly my experience and the view I've come to is that I don't think there's any market location in South Africa that can truly sustain over 100,000 square meters. And I think that is almost being proven now when you look at the big centres and you look at the growth and the fact that a lot of them have gone ex-growth, have big vacancies. And from a purely a shopper's perspective, after all, don't forget, we rely on the shopper, the consumer. And we've got to make it as comfortable for the consumer as possible to shop. And when you get to these mammoth, huge, big centres, it's not a comfortable experience. And as an investor in shopping centres, I'd like to know that if a customer parks his car or her car, that he or she would walk as much of the wall as possible. And these very big centres, it's impossible. You get fatigued. They're too big. And that means that you're not driving the feet past your tenants, and not everyone is going to benefit. So I think you've got to understand the market, do the research, and build to size, and be as Pete says, in a growth market. if you're in a diminishing market, then you should probably look at realizing your investment in that market.
You do have a focus, and you talk about it in your marketing material about being dominant in your trade area. Is there size attached to that, or I mean, what does that mean?
Being of a size in the actual trade area, so that you are dominant and you can reduce competition from competing centres. But there's no particular size involved in that. It's a matter of how big is the market, and just make sure that you're big enough to keep dominance in that market.
I think it's not just a size issue. It's also what you're offering. The components are key. You've got to understand what the market wants. I mean, every market has a need, and a market in, let's say, Cape Town is a different market to Johannesburg, which is a different market to, say, the Limpopo areas and so on. So you've got to have a true understanding. And I think possibly one of the problems is I'm not sure if a lot of the real estate, especially shopping centre investors, actually get out into these areas and walk the streets and understand what the market really is. So you've got to actually, create a product where the location is good, and you really want to be the first choice for consumers to visit within the competitive situation.
I think you guys have displayed that, where you're able to adapt your product to the market, because all the way from Orange Farm to Morningside, different product, perfect for the market in both instances.
You're correct, but also in the market, doesn't matter what the market is, give the shopper the quality of shopping centre. Because it's in one area as opposed to another, don't think you can just cut on finishes and give the people a second quality, second hand or second grade quality. They've got to have top quality wherever the market is.
I agree.
I think there's a lovely story in that regard, if I could just come
Please.
in. When we were early on sort of considering investing in Toyandu up in Limpopo, we were discussing the development with our now partner, who's a local businessman from Toyandu. And he'd won this tender and came to us and suggested we might be able to assist or partner with him. And we had one look at the plans on which he'd won the tender and said, well, we'd love to partner with you, but not on that plan. And we went through quite a process there with the local authority and debating it and presenting it and so on. And they'd obviously had a benchmark in Mall of the North because it was the nearest shopping environment. And I remember a meeting where one of the lady councillors said, we're not interested if you don't put in escalators. And so just off the cuff, I think I was doing the presentation, I said, don't worry, we'll give you escalators. Our thinking at that stage, of course, had been to do a single level centre because it was the most cost affordable and economic. But we put in those escalators. And I think it's going back to your point. I think you've got to respect the market. And I believe that rural development has undergone a huge change, a quantum leap now into centres where everyone is respected as a citizen at the level of finish and offering. And there's no segregation anymore. And I think that, I'm personally quite proud of that. I think we've helped to lead the industry into a much more respectful type of situation.
Just a very short aside on that. When we opened Tivani Mall in Toyandu, we took the security personnel and we gave them lessons on how to get on and off the escalator. And they would stand at the bottom of the escalator, and you'd get some old gogo from the outer-lying districts of Toyandu, and they'd take them by the arm and get them onto the escalator, and they'd go to the top. And then we'd find the old gogo was so impressed, she would go up and down a few times. She had never been exposed to an escalator before.
Just on escalator, there's another lovely story, because I think we want to have a little bit of raconteur in this thing as well. We developed a mall in Manzini, in Swaziland. What's it now? Eswatini, I think it's called. And the King's investment arm was part of one of the partners. And we'd go down, Pete and I would drive down and go to management meetings. And one day we went down And we put an escalator in there, and I think we were the first escalator in
Escalator in Swaziland.
And it was quite really, it was so amusing because we had to walk around as we usually do. And this was a strange escalator because it came off the street level to take up the fall in the land up onto the main shopping level. And there, at the bottom of the escalator was a local gentleman in full Swazi traditional kit collecting 50 cents from everyone who used the escalator. Obviously that didn't last very long.
Yeah, probably made a few bob. So on that then, when evaluating potential shopping centre investments, what are the vital elements that should be considered?
Yeah, okay. Well, I think, firstly, you've got to, I think there's a bit of a gut feel. If one is in the industry, you've got to be mobile. You've got to get in your car. And when you're in your car driving around, you've got to be aware. You've got to be aware of areas, markets, locations, and so on. And very often those things sort of give you a sense of where there's an opportunity. And once you've got that, the secret is to find a site that fulfills the fundamentals that you need. And that is the macro location, the micro location, the aspect of the site. Does it fall the right way? The shape of the site, is it something that you can plan in a sensible manner? Access and egress and those things. So those fundamentals are key. And location is still the first 5 points, but it's not only in a micro sense, it's a macro sense as well. And then once you've got that, then you've got to use the fundamentals of design. And I think we've seen far too many shopping centre developments which really fly in the face of those fundamentals, and they're not sound. They don't really work. And things work in a straight line. What's the shortest distance between 2 points? It's a straight line. And things like putting your major tenants at the end and bookending it, so that there's it generates an energy. Shopping is about energy, and if you can get the energy going through the mall, then you can optimize your opportunity. So I think there's a lack of understanding of what those key fundamentals are, and very often developers possibly abdicate a lot of the design thinking and decision making to architects who may themselves not be that familiar with the key fundamentals and drivers. So the developer has got to take responsibility and know what he wants to achieve.
I think one of those points that Pat has brought up, which I'll embellish upon, when you design a shopping centre, you lay it out from the mall as the first thing, and then you make it look pretty on the outside. There's certain developers who look at a pretty mall on the outside and they worry about the mall inside secondary. Well, that's impossible. It's the mall that's the important thing. The rest of the centre comes later.
Spot on.
Functionality, Joe.
Functionality, but another key aspect is tenants. And so what aspect does tenant relationships have in the retail property development field? Pat, you were the master of tenant relationships.
Okay. Well, it's really interesting. I think a lot of developers, and I think we possibly thought the same at one stage, is you have an idea to build a shopping centre and you need tenants. So you go along with a very strong mind that you've got to get these guys in. And maybe that's the biggest error in thinking that you can have. Because if you're going to create a new mall, what you're really doing is offering tenants the opportunity to grow their business. And I think that's missed by a lot of people. They want to take the tenant to generate the revenue. But if you can convince the tenant that there's an opportunity for them to grow their business, then you start developing the context of partnership. And there's too much we and you in the industry. So the aspect of actually understanding a tenant's business. I mean, one of the things we're going to get onto, I'm sure, is leasing. And if you look at leasing a shopping centre, and I've seen it with so many people, and one of the reasons why we do our own leasing is so we can control the process. And all too often, even with our own people, I often hear our guys going in and our girls going in and selling. And they don't listen. And I think the key with tenants is to actually go and listen to what the tenant is trying to achieve, understand the tenant, and once you understand what the tenant's trying to achieve, then you can marry the two objectives. So we should be listening more and subscribe to what they want to do. And through that, and I can recall a few instances where we've taken opportunities to some of the key tenants in South Africa where they didn't see the opportunity. Finally understood that there is an opportunity, and some years afterwards even thanked us for giving them the opportunity. So I think that again, it's long term. It's not a short term thing. Once you do a deal with a tenant, you know, you've got to keep understanding them, keep visiting them occasionally, and that aspect of visiting them, I think, Paul, you've had the experience where, you know, you go down to, some of the tenants are based in Cape Town or Durban or whatever, and they say, gee, it's nice of you to come and see us. Most of the people don't come and see us. And it's that ethos of really developing a trust and the tenant recognizing that you really are also working in their interest.